London, 1720. A company with almost no real business became the most valuable company in Britain. People sold homes, borrowed money, emptied savings accounts. Even some of the smartest men in Europe bought in. Then, within months, billions in modern wealth vanished. This is the story of the South Sea Bubble, the world's first great stock market crash.
To understand why it happened, you need to understand one thing about early 18th century Britain. They were absolutely drowning in war debt. The War of the Spanish Succession had been running for over a decade. Britain had been funding armies, navies, and the kind of continental diplomacy that costs a truly offensive amount of money. By 1711, the British government owed £10 million it couldn't pay back. That's roughly £2 billion today. The Treasury looked at the books. Then they looked at each other. Then they looked at the books again. So, who wants to tell the king we're broke? Not it. Also not it. What if we just invented a company? Enter Robert Harley, Earl of Oxford and Lord Treasurer of Great Britain. Harley had an idea, a beautiful, audacious, completely unhinged idea. What if the government didn't pay back the debt directly? What if, instead, they converted it into stock in a brand new trading company? Creditors would hand over their government bonds. In exchange, they'd get shares in this exciting new venture. The government gets debt relief, investors get equity, everyone wins. There was just one small question. What would this company actually do?
Harley had an answer. South America. Specifically, the Spanish colonies, the ones absolutely bursting with silver, gold, and untapped trade routes. Britain, he announced, would receive exclusive trading rights with Spanish South America and the Pacific. The room erupted. The whole continent? For us? Every port? All that silver? Yes, all of it. There's just one small thing. What's that? We're currently at war with Spain. Right, yes, but when that ends, it's been going for 11 years. Details. We're getting ahead of ourselves. The point is, opportunity. In 1711, the South Sea Company was born. Its official purpose, to trade with Spanish South America and the Pacific. Its actual business, managing British government debt while vaguely gesturing at the word trade. But nobody was asking hard questions, because the brochure looked incredible.
Here's the thing about the early 1700s that you need to understand. The Dutch had just spent a century getting extraordinarily rich off the VOC. Everyone had seen it happen. Everyone had heard the stories about Amsterdam bakers retiring on dividends, about ordinary people investing in ships and waking up wealthy. Britain wanted that. Not in a casual, that sounds nice way, in a feverish, desperate, I will mortgage my house for this kind of way. And the South Sea Company fed that hunger perfectly. The directors were not subtle about it. They whispered about mountains of silver. They hinted at trade volumes that would make the VOC look like a corner shop. They put South Sea in the name, which frankly just sounded rich. The stock started trading at £100 per share. The public bought it. The public loved it. And somewhere deep in the company's actual operations, a single ship made a single voyage to South America. It came back half empty. The directors buried that report immediately.
The peace with Spain finally came in 1713, and the actual trading rights Britain received? The asiento, the right to sell enslaved African people to Spanish colonies and to send one, exactly one, merchant ship per year to trade in goods. One ship per
year.
One ship.
One ship, the whole continent, and we get one ship.
It's a starting point.
It's barely a sentence. The South Sea Company ran that one permitted ship roughly 3 times over the next few years. Spain kept taking a cut. War broke out again anyway. Trading essentially stopped, but the stock kept climbing. Because by now, the South Sea Company had discovered something far more profitable than trade: the stock itself. Here's the genius evil at the heart of the scheme. The South Sea Company realized that their actual business didn't matter as long as the stock price kept rising. Because here was the loop. High stock price meant people wanted the stock. Wanting the stock meant the company could raise capital by issuing new shares. Raising capital meant they could take on more government debt. Taking on more debt meant the government needed them to succeed. Government support meant confidence. Confidence meant higher stock price. Around and around. The stock price was the product. So, in 1720, the directors made their boldest move yet. They went to Parliament and offered to absorb the entire remaining British national debt. All of it. Every penny.
In exchange for what? The right to issue more stock? That's it?
That's it. And why would we agree to that? Because we're going to give you a very, very significant amount of shares, personally, as a gift. Between friends. We'll need a moment to deliberate. Take all the time you need. The deliberation lasted approximately 4 minutes. Parliament approved the deal. The government handed its entire debt problem to a company whose core business model was vibes and selective accounting. And then the pump began. To get the stock price up, the directors needed the public to buy. To get the public to buy, they needed excitement. So they manufactured it. Company directors spread whispered rumors about secret trade deals, about incoming silver shipments, about a treaty so lucrative it couldn't be discussed openly yet. They gave shares to influential people, politicians, aristocrats, society figures, who then talked loudly and publicly about what a magnificent investment this was. They allowed investors to buy shares on credit, putting only 10% down, borrowing the rest. This was new. This was extraordinary. This meant you didn't need to be rich to invest like you were. And then they watched what happened next. January 1720, shares at £128. February, £175. March, £330. The feeding frenzy was on. By June, the stock hit £1,000 per share, a tenfold increase in 6 months. London stopped functioning normally. Tailors forgot to tailor. Merchants forgot to merchant. Clergymen wrote investment pamphlets. Coffee houses became impromptu trading floors. Streets outside the exchange were so clogged with people trying to buy shares that carriages couldn't pass. And it wasn't just the South Sea Company. The bubble had a gravitational field. Dozens of new companies launched to capture overflow excitement. One company raised money to manufacture a wheel of perpetual motion. One offered to import jackasses from Spain. One, and this is completely real, raised a substantial sum to fund a company for carrying on an undertaking of great advantage, but nobody to know what it is. The founder collected deposits in the morning, vanished by the afternoon. People gave him money anyway. This was the market now. Into all of this walked Sir Isaac Newton, that Isaac Newton, the man who had worked out the laws of planetary motion, who had invented calculus, who had fundamentally restructured humanity's understanding of how the universe operates. He bought South Sea shares early, watched them double, sold, made a tidy profit, felt sensible about it, then watched from the sidelines as the price kept climbing and climbing and climbing. And eventually Isaac Newton, genius, polymath, arguably the greatest scientific mind in history, could not take it anymore. He bought back in, at the top. He would later lose £20,000, equivalent today to roughly $4 million. He reportedly said, "I can calculate the motions of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of men." If Isaac Newton got swept up in this, understand what we're actually dealing with. This wasn't stupidity. This was something more dangerous. This was a story so good that wanting it to be true became more powerful than evidence that it wasn't.
But while the public was buying, the directors were selling. Quietly, carefully. Beginning in the summer of 1720, the people who actually knew what the company was worth started unloading their shares at peak prices onto an enthusiastic public. By August, the cracks began to show. Small investors who had borrowed to buy started struggling to make payments. The company quietly tried to prop up the price by buying its own stock. It didn't work. The whispers started. "I heard the directors have been selling. I heard the trade figures are fabricated. I heard there were never any silver mountains. Someone said Newton lost everything." The whispers became talk. The talk became panic. September 1720. The stock that had stood at £1,000 in June hit £150. People who had borrowed to invest couldn't repay. Banks that had lent to investors couldn't recover. The fortune of a generation, assembled in months, evaporated in weeks. Streets that had been clogged with eager buyers were now clogged with ruin.
Parliament convened. The investigation was, to put it diplomatically, explosive. The company's books were examined. The books that had been presented to Parliament, the books that had justified giving the South Sea Company the entire national debt. They were a work of creative fiction. Directors had kept multiple sets of accounts. They had issued stock to politicians before the parliamentary vote, then quietly canceled those shares after approval, essentially bribing the entire legislature with imaginary money. They had recorded phantom transactions, hidden liabilities, invented assets. The Chancellor of the Exchequer was found to have taken bribes. He was expelled from Parliament and sent to the Tower of London. Several directors fled the country. Those who didn't flee had their estates seized and partially compensated investors. The director primarily responsible for the scheme, John Blunt, was left with £1,000 from a fortune of over £180,000. The public mood was somewhere between furious and homicidal. One MP proposed the directors be sewn into sacks with venomous snakes and thrown into the Thames. The motion did not pass, but only barely. From the wreckage, one man emerged with his reputation enhanced. Robert Walpole, a relatively junior politician who had been skeptical of the scheme from the beginning, became the man tasked with stabilizing the financial system. He did it. He restructured the debt, saved the Bank of England, calmed the markets. In doing so, he accumulated so much political capital that he became effectively Britain's first prime minister. The South Sea Bubble, in a roundabout way, created the office of Prime Minister. History is genuinely unhinged. Parliament also passed the Bubble Act, making it illegal to form joint stock companies without a royal charter, a law designed to prevent this exact thing from happening again. The law stood for a century. The thing it was supposed to prevent happened approximately every generation anyway. Because the South Sea Bubble didn't teach people that manias were dangerous, it taught them that other people were the fools, that they would have gotten out in time.
Here's what makes the South Sea Bubble genuinely remarkable 200 years later. The financial mechanics, the stock price manipulation, the borrowed leverage, the insider selling into retail enthusiasm, the government entanglement, the books that didn't match reality. Every single element of this story would be instantly recognizable to anyone who lived through 2008, or the dot-com crash, or any of the dozen speculative manias in between. The company had almost no real business. The business it had was largely fictional. The books were fabricated, the politicians were bribed, and it became the most valuable company in the country. The lesson that history apparently keeps trying to teach us and that we keep not learning is this: when a story is exciting enough, when the potential gains are large enough, when everyone around you seems to be getting rich, the normal human brain stops asking whether it's real. It only asks how to get in. The South Sea Company was not a trading empire. It was a mirror. It showed Britain exactly what it wanted to see, and Britain paid accordingly. The art of government consists in taking as much money as possible from one part of the citizens to give to the other. Voltaire, watching the bubble collapse from Paris, while simultaneously losing his own money in it.